All right, this is something that I think we need to talk about a little bit as a community, and it's whether or not you should play the meta. In fact, whether or not you should only play the absolute best things in the meta, and whether that matters to you. Hi everybody, Jake, your resident content cowboy here. Yeehaw, let's get into it. There's no question that winning with or without the meta can feel pretty good. For instance, winning with the meta, good game. Bonk. Bonk. Man, I really like Escavalier though. Holy. And winning with something less meta. Take him down. I think the question really is, what is right for you and how meta is meta enough? And how many times will I say meta in this video? The person to get that number right in the comments wins. What do they win? Okay. Really quick for anyone who is confused or unaware of what meta means, because maybe this is the first time you're kind of hearing that term thrown around. It just means the best possible strategies in a current, game at that moment, right? So if you're looking at last deck, it would have been something like Darkrai Giratina. If you're looking earlier than that, like way earlier, it would have been something like Pikachu or Mewtwo EX, So the meta is the best possible strategy or the best possible set of circumstances that you can put yourself in heading into a match. That is what you are looking to play if you were talking about the meta. Then there are decks that aren't the absolute best, but they're pretty close to being meta. And for me, in my brain, I kind of wrap them all together. I look at one deck as like the absolute best thing, the meta deck. And then there are some decks that perform pretty well in that environment. Again, for our last set, if we're thinking Darkrai Giratina, there were some decks that did pretty well against that. You had Lucario Rampardos, you had Meowscarada variants, things like that played pretty well. Charizard still did well into it because it could KO one of those Pokemon. So there's like the meta, and then there are things that are close to the meta. Then there are things that are not the meta or off meta, just kind of wild stuff that has an opportunity to win, but is definitely not as consistent as other meta decks. When I think of off meta things that you can make work, it's like when you're making something really fun work, like the Metal Magnezone, I think is a great example. Like Metal Magnezone Arceus is definitely not a meta deck. It is a metal deck. We'll be right back. It's definitely not a meta deck. Again, it is a metal deck. Can you imagine if I did that bit again? And I think it's a really fun deck, and it does decently well if it gets powered up correctly, but it for sure is not a competitive deck compared to Darkrai Giratina. So I've kind of given you an idea of what the meta looks like a little bit for Pocket, and this season is really interesting. We still have Darkrai Giratina as a very powerful deck. You have Oricorio disrupting the meta in some interesting ways. You have Rare Candy changing the game in big ways, letting you do things like have Charizard evolve immediately so that you can stoke Charizard in that active spot. You have Incineroar entering the game. There are lots of really cool options. And of course, Greninja with Rare Candy has been such a standout in this meta. So my big question is, what should you be playing in the meta? And of course, for everyone, this is going to be different. I remember seeing this post on Twitter from Jayudi, I apologize if I'm pronouncing that name incorrectly, witnessing some insane mental gymnastics using a good deck in Pokemon Pocket. Imagine using a top tier in any other game and calling it a loser's mindset. So the conversation between him and someone on Twitter was, deck for losers, by the way. He was posting a Giratina Darkrai deck. Not in a literal sense, of course, you will win a lot, but a loser's mindset. But if it wins, this isn't so. Someone's arguing with them. And he says, that's what I'm saying. A deck may win, but people play it because they have a loser's mindset. And this got me thinking a lot, because every game I have ever played, the absolute most meta thing is pretty cringe. Now, I think for everyone, they're going to have a different perspective on this, and I would love to hear from you in the comments, but every game I've played, when you see something that is unquestionably the best possible thing in that current game, winning does feel a little expected. So I think in that sense, it feels a little hollow, right? I mean, this kind of reminds me of some other games I've played, like when I think to a game like Pokemon Unite, that's Pokemon's MOBA. There was a time where Mewtwo Y or Zacian or things like that were so unbelievably broken that playing them almost guaranteed a win unless you were fully trolling your game. And it was pretty cringe to see people playing those Pokemon, even though, yes, they are in the game and available. Or it reminds me of, seeing what happens with the Smash community and talking about Steve and things like that, and should it be banned from tournaments? And on and on and on. But there's no question, if you are looking to win consistently, you should be playing something meta, or at least something decent, right? So I think where you draw the line is going to be different for everybody. I'll tell you a little bit about my mindset around it, but also I think it's fully reasonable that someone would not believe what I believe. First, I'll just tell you what I like to do. I like to play things that are good, but not the absolute best. And for me, I feel like there's a level of challenge that's involved in that. And it's also fun. I like to play a variety of things. So I wouldn't find one deck that I thought was the best and just grind only that deck. However, there will be certain play patterns that I think are just really exciting, and I want to play that a whole bunch. Sometimes that's a relatively good deck. Sometimes it's not the best deck. Like last season, my absolute favorite deck was Beedrill. I love Beedrill. I think it was pretty good for climbing ranked as well. It was definitely not the most meta deck that we had, right? We had Darkrai Giratina, then we had Gyarados EX, it was very, very close. And then you probably had Meowscarada Magnezone and Lucario Rampardos. Then right below that, you probably had Meowscarada Beedrill. Like, it was probably in the conversation, but not really the absolute best deck. I just really liked playing it, so that's what I wanted to play. And you do feel good when you kind of slay the giant. You take down the best deck in the game with something that is clearly not the best deck. But you do have to recognize that in doing this, you are losing more games. There's no question, if I piloted Darkrai Giratina, one of the hardest decks to pilot, that's a callback. If I piloted Darkrai Giratina or Darkrai Mewtwo or something like that at the start of the season, I would have had a better win rate. I would have gotten to Master Ball in less games, and I could have grinded through Master longer playing a deck like that. No question, you will do better playing the absolute best thing in the game. And for some people, that is their only goal with playing something. They want to win. They want to win. They want to take the absolute best thing possible and win. And you can't really blame them, right? I mean, you could tell them to go take a shower at some point, but you can't really blame them wanting to play the best thing, wanting to be the very best like no one ever was. Dun, dun, dun. I do think this is a mindset that makes total sense. And I jokingly clown on people playing the meta because it's fun. And I do think if that's the only thing you're playing, you are experiencing this game in a way that I can't personally understand. Like, that's not how my brain works for fun, you know? For me to have fun, it's not those same inputs of play, only good thing, win as much as possible. But for some people it is. And I think that's totally fine. Look, everyone is going to enjoy things for different reasons. I wish that the meta was more diverse always. Like, I think it would be cool if more decks were relevant. But I will say, compared to many of the games I've played, I think Pocket is relatively similar to a lot of them meta-wise. You'll usually have one or maybe two things that are the best. Then you'll have a few things that counter those decently well. Then you'll have some other decks that are kind of in the periphery, or other play styles, gear, Pokemon, heroes, whatever game you're playing, that are good, but not as good as some of the absolute best things. And I think that's great. I think it's great that some people will play this game and their only goal is climbing up that master rank leaderboard. They want to be the #1 player in the world. They will grind for 12 hours a day, playing 1 or 2 decks. That is what works for them. And then for other people, they will play in different ways. It's true that at times it feels a little unfortunate that your fill-in-the-blank deck, your Empoleon deck, just isn't going to be a deck that's going to compete with the top stuff in the game. But that's the truth of anything ever, right? There are things that work really well and things that don't, and then there are things that work pretty good. And if you're a player like me, I think you want to play a lot of all of it. I think the only thing that I'd like to stay away from is the absolute most meta thing, because for whatever reason, and again, this is my brain, it doesn't need to be yours, but for whatever reason, I think I enjoy, or I don't enjoy, I guess I should say, winning with the most meta thing. It almost feels expected, if that makes sense. You should be winning with it. You have the best chances to win with it. It's great when you play it well. I think that's awesome. but it doesn't kind of scratch that itch for me. And I know for other people it does. So I think when you look at it, there are just really pros and cons to each situation. The pros, obviously, with playing the meta is if you want to grind, this is the best deck to grind. You will get to Masters as quickly as possible with this deck. If you have a limited amount of time, I could understand people saying, well, I'm just going to play the meta deck because I want to hit Ultra 1. That's when the rewards are good, and that's where I'm going to stop. That makes total sense to me. And then I think other people will say, that doesn't sound fun to me, and I'm going to grind, and I want to get high up on the leaderboards or whatever, but I'm not going to play the absolute best thing. Also awesome. And then I think there are some people who say, look, dude, I want to play this deck. I don't care. I'm making a Mimikyu deck, and I don't care what you have to say, Jake. I'm making a Passimian deck. I know some games we're going to win, some games we're going to lose, but I like this card. I want to play with this card, and I'm going to grind with it. I think all of those mindsets are totally fine. And I do think it's kind of funny that people who play the meta get a little irritated that people kind of roll their eyes at them. But I do think when you are doing that, when you are playing the absolute best thing and doing well, you also have to understand that it is expected. So I think you can take, you know, a little friendly jab here and there. Or if someone wants to take a look at one of my decks and go, why aren't you playing Darkrai Giratina, which happens at literally every video I post, is like, I don't understand. Why wouldn't you simply play Darkrai Giratina? That's just, for some people, that is how their brain works. Why wouldn't you simply play only the best deck? And for other people, you would go, why aren't you taking more showers playing the only meta deck? I would love to hear from you in the comments. What do you think about playing the meta or not playing the meta in maybe not only Pocket, but whatever game is your game, right? Like, do you feel good? Does it make you happy only playing the best thing because you care most about winning? Or do you like playing other things and, you know, you have your own reasons for that? I would love to hear about it. Thank you all for watching. Thank you for listening. Hope you enjoyed it. I'll see y'all next time. We did it. Go shower, Giratina users.